everything. Most people don't fail because they lack talent, intelligence, or ambition. They fail because their lives are built on weak foundations. They wake up busy but not effective, everything. Motivated but inconsistent, exhausted yet unfulfilled. Productivity isn't about doing more, it's about building a life that naturally supports focus, progress, and meaningful results, everything. In this audiobook, you'll discover the 5 essential pillars that transform effort into momentum and intention into real-world outcomes. When these pillars are strong, everything. Productivity stops feeling like a struggle and starts becoming your default state. Most people believe they struggle with productivity because they lack motivation, discipline, or time, everything. But if you look closely, the real issue usually runs deeper. It starts with confusion. When you're unclear about what truly matters, everything feels important. Everything. Every message demands attention. Every opportunity feels urgent. Every task competes for your energy. And when everything feels important, nothing truly is. Everything. That's how effort becomes scattered, days blur together, and progress feels painfully slow. Clarity is the foundation of a productive life. Without it, even the hardest work can lead nowhere. Everything. With it, even small, consistent actions begin to compound. Think about driving at night through thick fog. You might have a powerful engine and a full tank of fuel, but without visibility, everything. You move slowly, cautiously, and often in the wrong direction. The moment the fog clears, you don't suddenly become a better driver, you simply see where you're going. Everything. Clarity works the same way. It doesn't magically give you more energy or talent. It removes the fog. Many people wake up every day reacting instead of directing. They respond to emails, everything, notifications, expectations, and problems created by others. By the time the day ends, they feel exhausted, yet strangely unsatisfied. They were busy all day, everything, but nothing meaningful moved forward. That exhaustion isn't from effort, it's from misalignment, everything. It's the mental friction of pushing energy into things that don't reflect your real priorities. True clarity begins with an honest question most people avoid. Everything. What actually matters to me right now? Not what should matter, not what others expect, not what looks impressive, everything. But what genuinely deserves your limited time and attention in this season of your life. This question can feel uncomfortable because it forces you to confront trade-offs, everything. When you say something matters, you're also saying other things matter less, and many people would rather stay vague than make that decision. Consider someone who says they want success, everything, health, strong relationships, financial freedom, and peace of mind, all at the same time with equal intensity. On the surface, that sounds admirable. In reality, it's paralyzing, everything. Clarity doesn't mean you abandon other areas of life. It means you decide what deserves primary focus right now. Productivity thrives when priorities are few and intentional, everything, not endless and vague. A useful way to find clarity is to separate motion from progress. Motion feels productive. Progress actually is productive. Motion is answering messages, everything, attending meetings, scrolling for research, or reorganizing tasks endlessly. Progress is working on the 1 or 2 actions that directly move your life forward. Everything. The problem is that motion feels safer. Progress requires commitment. Once you identify what truly matters, you can no longer hide behind business. Everything. Think of a time when you felt deeply focused and effective. Maybe it was preparing for an important exam, building a project you truly believed in, or working toward a goal that excited you. Everything. During that period, distractions had less power over you. You said no more easily. You didn't need constant motivation because the direction itself pulled you forward. Everything. That wasn't discipline alone, it was clarity creating momentum. Clarity also means understanding your long-term vision, even if it's imperfect. Everything. Many people wait for a crystal clear life plan before taking action. That clarity rarely arrives. What you need instead is a general direction that feels aligned with who you want to become. Everything. You don't need to see the entire staircase, just the next few steps. When your actions align with a meaningful direction, uncertainty becomes manageable instead of paralyzing. Ask yourself, everything. If I continue living exactly like this for the next 5 years, where will it likely lead me? This isn't about fear, it's about awareness. The future isn't built in dramatic moments. Everything. It's shaped quietly through repeated daily choices. Clarity shines a light on those choices and asks whether they match the life you want to live. Everything. Another powerful aspect of clarity is understanding your personal definition of success. Too many people chase borrowed goals. Everything. They pursue milestones that look impressive on the outside but feel empty on the inside. When your goals are disconnected from your values, productivity becomes exhausting. Everything. You may achieve more, but feel less fulfilled. Clarity reconnects effort with meaning. Meaningful goals have a different emotional quality. They energize rather than drain. Everything. They make sacrifice feel purposeful instead of painful. When you're clear on why something matters, the how becomes easier to tolerate. Early mornings, focused effort, everything. And delayed gratifications stop feeling like punishment and start feeling like investment. Clarity also simplifies decision-making. When you know your priorities, many choices make themselves. Everything. Opportunities that don't align lose their emotional pull. Distractions feel less tempting because they come at the cost of something you value more. This discipline is often misunderstood. Everything. Most people imagine it as forced pressure or a constant battle with yourself. They picture clenched jaws, strict schedules, and endless motivation speeches just to get through the day. Everything. But real discipline doesn't feel like a fight. It feels like stability. It feels like knowing what you're going to do before your emotions even get a vote. Discipline at its highest level. Everything is not willpower. It is a system. Think about how many decisions you make every day before noon. What time to wake up, whether to check your phone, what to eat, whether to work or delay. Everything. Whether to push through discomfort or promise yourself you'll try again tomorrow. Each decision drains a little energy. Over time, that constant negotiation with yourself becomes exhausting. Everything. This is why people don't fail because they're lazy. They fail because they're tired of deciding. The most disciplined people aren't stronger than you. They're clearer than you. Everything. They remove choice from the moments that matter most. They don't wake up asking, "Do I feel like doing this today?" They already decided yesterday, last week, or years ago. Everything. Discipline begins when you stop negotiating with your moods and start honoring your standards. Imagine someone who wakes up every morning at the same time to train, no matter the weather. Everything. On the surface, it looks impressive, but inside their mind, there's very little drama. There's no debate. The alarm goes off and their body moves. Not because they're inspired, everything, but because that's who they are. Their identity has already made the decision. Discipline becomes effortless when it's aligned with who you believe you are. Everything. This is where most people get it wrong. They wait to feel disciplined before acting. In reality, action creates discipline, not the other way around. Everything. Every time you keep a small promise to yourself, something powerful happens. You build self-trust. You start to believe that your word means something. And once you trust yourself, everything. Discipline stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like self-respect. Think back to a time when you told yourself you would do something simple. Everything. Like going for a short walk or finishing a small task, and you actually followed through. Notice how that felt. It wasn't dramatic. It was calm, grounded. Everything. That feeling is discipline taking root. Not loud motivation, but quiet reliability. Systems are what protect that reliability. A system is not a rigid prison. It's a support structure. Everything. It's deciding in advance what happens when conditions are good and when they're bad. For example, instead of saying, "I'll work out when I feel motivated," a system says, "Everything. I train at this time on these days, no exceptions." Motivation becomes irrelevant. The system carries you when emotions fluctuate. Personal rules are another powerful tool. Everything. A rule might be something simple like, "Everything. I don't check my phone for the first hour of the day," or "I stop working at a fixed time each night," or "I never miss twice." These rules eliminate daily friction. Everything. You don't have to argue with yourself because the answer is already set. Over time, these rules become part of your character. Everything. One of the most liberating moments in personal growth is realizing that freedom comes from structure. When your basics are automated, sleep, work, movement, focus, everything. You free up mental space for creativity, learning, and presence. Without structure, your mind is always busy managing chaos. With structure, your mind becomes calm and sharp. Everything. Discipline also changes how you see yourself. When you consistently do what you said you would do, even when it's uncomfortable, you develop inner authority. Everything. You stop needing external validation or constant reminders. You become someone who can be trusted, not just by others, but by yourself. Everything. And that trust becomes a source of quiet confidence that shows up in every area of life. There will be days when you feel tired, distracted, or discouraged. Everything. Discipline does not mean ignoring those feelings. It means not letting them make your decisions. You can acknowledge discomfort without obeying it. You can say, "I don't feel like this today. Everything, and I'm doing it anyway." That sentence, repeated over time, reshapes your identity. Start small. Discipline grows through consistency, not intensity. Everything. Choose routines that are simple enough to maintain even on bad days. 5 minutes of focused work, a short walk, writing 1 page. These actions may seem insignificant, but they compound. Everything. Each repetition strengthens the system. Each follow-through reinforces self-trust. Pay attention to how you speak to yourself when you fail. Discipline is not about perfection. Everything. It's about recovery. Missing a day is human. Letting that missed day turn into a missed week is a system failure, not a moral one. Adjust the system, not your self-worth. Everything. Ask what made it hard and simplify the process. Discipline is built by learning, not by punishment. As discipline becomes part of your life, you'll notice something subtle but profound. Everything. Stress decreases. Decisions become easier. Your days feel steadier. You're no longer swinging between extremes of motivation and guilt. Instead, you move forward at a controlled, sustainable pace. Progress becomes predictable. This is the true power of discipline. It's not about grinding harder. Everything. It's about creating a life where doing the right thing is the default option, where success is not dependent on how you feel, but on who you've decided to be. When discipline is system-based, everything. It doesn't drain you, it protects you. And slowly, without fanfare, you become someone who follows through. Someone reliable. Someone grounded. Someone whose actions match their intentions. Everything. Not because you force yourself, but because your life is designed that way. Most people try to solve productivity problems at the level of time management. They buy planners, download apps, everything, create schedules, and promise themselves they'll finally get serious. But after a few days or weeks, everything collapses. Not because the plan was bad, everything, but because the energy behind it was weak. Productivity doesn't fail first in your calendar. It fails in your body and your mind. Think about the days when everything felt easier. Everything. You woke up clear-headed. Your body felt light instead of heavy. Tasks that usually felt draining seemed manageable, even engaging. On those days, you didn't need extreme motivation. Everything. You just moved. That's energy doing its job. Now think about the opposite. You wake up already tired. Your thoughts are foggy. Small tasks feel overwhelming. You procrastinate. Everything. Not because you're lazy, but because every action feels expensive. That's not a discipline problem. That's an energy deficit. Your body and mind are not obstacles to productivity. Everything. They are the engine. And like any engine, when it's neglected, overworked, or poorly fueled, performance collapses. High achievers understand this at a deep level. Everything. They don't see rest as weakness or self-care as indulgence. They see energy as an asset to be managed with intention. There's a common story many people live through. Everything. They push hard for a while, long hours, late nights, caffeine replacing sleep, stress replacing structure. At first, results come, then something shifts, focus fades, motivation drops, everything. The body starts pushing back through exhaustion, irritability, or illness. And instead of adjusting, they push harder, believing effort alone will fix what is actually an energy problem. Everything. That cycle is how burnout is born. Sustainable productivity works differently. It respects limits instead of fighting them. It builds strength instead of borrowing it from the future. Everything. Physical vitality is the foundation. You don't need to become an athlete, but you do need to stop treating your body like an afterthought. Movement is not just about fitness. Everything. It's about circulation, oxygen, and mental sharpness. A short walk can reset a foggy mind better than another cup of coffee. Everything. Regular movement trains your body to produce energy instead of conserving it out of fear. Sleep is not wasted time, it's maintenance. When sleep is compromised, everything else becomes harder. Focus, emotional regulation, decision-making, everything. Many people are trying to build disciplined lives on a sleep-deprived brain and then wondering why consistency feels impossible. Rest is not something you earn after success. Everything. It's something that enables it. Nutrition plays a quieter but equally powerful role. Energy crashes are often self-inflicted. Heavy meals, constant sugar spikes, irregular eating patterns, everything. They all create instability. You don't need perfection. You need awareness. Notice how different foods affect your clarity and mood. Notice when you feel steady versus scattered. Everything. Productivity improves naturally when your body isn't fighting internal chaos. Mental clarity is the next layer. A tired mind cannot focus deeply. Everything. And a cluttered mind drains energy even when the body is rested. Many people carry mental noise everywhere they go. Unfinished thoughts, unresolved stress, constant input, everything. They wake up already overwhelmed because their mind never truly shut down the night before. This is where intentional pauses matter. Silence, even for a few minutes, creates space. Everything. Journaling clears mental backlog. Writing down tasks reduces cognitive load. When your mind no longer has to remember everything, it can finally think clearly. Everything. Productivity thrives in clarity, not pressure. Emotional balance is often ignored, yet it quietly determines how much energy you have access to. Unprocessed frustration, resentment, anxiety, everything. Or self-doubt act like background apps draining your battery. You can't always eliminate stress, but you can change how you respond to it. Awareness is the first step. Everything. Instead of suppressing emotions, acknowledge them. Name them. When emotions are recognized, they lose their grip. When they're ignored, they leak into everything you do. Everything. There's a powerful shift that happens when you stop judging yourself for low-energy days and start listening to them. Sometimes fatigue is a signal, not a flaw. It may be asking for rest, everything, adjustment, or emotional honesty. Sustainable strength comes from cooperation with yourself, not constant self-criticism. Everything. One of the most practical shifts you can make is learning to work with your energy rhythms instead of against them. Notice when you naturally feel most focused, most creative, most alert. Everything. Protect those windows. Use them for meaningful work, not distractions. Save low-energy periods for simpler tasks. This alignment alone can double effectiveness without adding more hours. Everything. High performers don't try to be intense all day. They alternate between focus and recovery. They understand that recovery is part of performance, not separate from it. Short breaks, everything. Intentional breathing, stepping away before exhaustion hits. These aren't signs of weakness. They're signs of intelligence. There's also a deeper mindset shift required. Everything. You must stop equating exhaustion with progress. Being tired does not mean you worked well. Being busy does not mean you were effective. True productivity feels surprisingly calm. Everything. It feels grounded. It feels sustainable. When your energy is managed well, effort no longer feels like self-destruction. Everything. Imagine building a life where you wake up with enough energy to think clearly, act decisively, and still have something left at the end of the day. Not through extremes, everything, but through consistency. Small choices compound. Earlier sleep, a walk instead of scrolling, water instead of another stimulant, boundaries instead of burnout. Everything. This chapter isn't asking you to do more. It's asking you to stop draining yourself unnecessarily, to protect your energy as carefully as you protect your time. Everything. Because time without energy is useless. But energy, even in limited time, can produce extraordinary results. Everything. When you begin treating your body and mind as assets instead of tools to be exploited, something changes. Productivity stops feeling like a fight. Focus becomes more natural. Everything. Discipline becomes less forceful. And strength becomes something you build day by day, instead of something you constantly run out of. Focus is no longer a natural state. Everything. It has become a skill, one that must be protected, trained, and deliberately rebuilt. We live in a world designed to fracture attention. Every device, every notification, everything, every scroll is competing for the same limited resource, your awareness. Most people don't realize that they aren't tired or unmotivated, they're mentally scattered. Everything. Their energy leaks in 1,000 small directions, leaving nothing deep enough to produce meaningful work. Focus is not about forcing concentration harder. Everything. It's about removing what doesn't deserve your attention so what truly matters can finally receive it. Think about how often your mind is interrupted in a single hour. A message arrives. Everything. A notification lights up. A random thought pulls you away. You check something quickly, and 10 minutes disappear. None of these moments feel destructive on their own. That's the danger. Everything. Distraction rarely announces itself as a problem. It disguises itself as urgency, curiosity, or connection. But over time, it trains your brain to expect constant stimulation. Everything. Silence begins to feel uncomfortable. Stillness feels boring. And deep work starts to feel impossible. Focus begins with a simple but uncomfortable truth. Everything. Not everything deserves your attention. Most inputs in your life are optional, not essential. News cycles, endless opinions, background noise, constant updates. Everything. These things consume mental bandwidth without giving anything valuable back. When you allow everything in, you dilute your ability to think clearly. Everything. A focused life is not about adding more productivity tools. It's about subtraction. Removing noise is the first act of control. There's a story many high performers share. Everything. Even if they don't realize it. At some point, they stopped being available to everything. They didn't become rude or disconnected. They became selective. Everything. They learned that accessibility is not the same as effectiveness. Just because someone can reach you does not mean they should. Everything. Just because something is interesting does not mean it is important. Focus requires boundaries, not just with other people, but with your own impulses, everything. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is learning to control your inputs before trying to control your outputs. If you start your day by flooding your mind with messages, videos, everything, opinions, and noise, you've already lost the battle for focus. Your brain is reactive before it ever has a chance to be intentional. But when you begin the day with quiet, everything, without reaching for stimulation, you create space. In that space, clarity forms. You remember what matters. You decide instead of react, everything. Deep concentration is not created through intensity alone. It's created through safety. Your mind needs to feel that it won't be interrupted, everything. That's why focus feels impossible when notifications are on, even if they never arrive. A part of your brain is always waiting, everything. True focus happens when the mind relaxes into the certainty that nothing else is demanding attention. This is why environment matters more than motivation, everything. When your surroundings protect your attention, focus becomes natural instead of forced. Consider how children play when they are fully absorbed. Hours pass without effort, everything. They don't need reminders to focus because their attention isn't being constantly pulled away. That state doesn't disappear with age, it's buried under noise. When you remove distractions, everything, that depth returns. Focus is your default state when it's allowed to exist. Another crucial element of focus is learning to do one thing at a time, fully, everything. Multitasking is not a sign of efficiency, it's a sign of divided attention. Every time you switch tasks, your brain pays a cost. You lose momentum, you lose depth, you lose presence, everything. Over time, constant switching trains your mind to stay shallow. But when you commit to a single task, even for a short window, you retrain your brain to stay with discomfort, complexity, everything, and silence. That's where real progress lies. There will be moments when focusing feels uncomfortable. Your mind will look for escape. It will suggest checking something, moving on, everything, doing anything else. This is not a sign that something is wrong. It's a sign that focus is working. Discomfort is the doorway to depth, everything. When you stay with a task just a little longer than feels natural, you strengthen your ability to concentrate. Each time you resist distraction, you reclaim a piece of control. Everything. Focus is also deeply connected to emotional clarity. When your mind is cluttered, emotions feel overwhelming. When your attention is scattered, anxiety increases, everything. But when you focus on one thing at a time, your nervous system settles. You feel present instead of pulled apart. Calm is not the absence of activity, it's the absence of mental noise, everything. Focus creates calm because it simplifies experience. One task, one direction. Real-life focus doesn't require perfection. You will get distracted. That's part of being human. Everything. The difference is how quickly you return. Focus is not about never losing attention. It's about noticing when it's gone and gently bringing it back without judgment. Everything. Every return strengthens the habit. Every moment of awareness builds presence. Think of attention like a spotlight. Wherever you point it, that area grows brighter and more detailed. Everything. If you constantly swing the spotlight around, nothing becomes clear. But when you hold it steady, depth emerges, ideas connect. Solutions appear, confidence grows. Everything. Not because you're doing more, but because you're fully engaged with what you're doing. One practical way to protect focus is to create intentional focus windows. Everything. Short periods where you eliminate distractions and commit fully to one task. No notifications, no multitasking, no switching. At first, these windows may feel difficult. Everything. Your mind will resist. But over time, they become easier and even enjoyable. You begin to associate focus with progress, not pressure. Everything. It's also important to recognize that focus is not just about work. It's about presence in life. Being fully present in a conversation. Fully present during rest. Everything. Fully present during reflection. When your attention is always divided, life feels thin and rushed. When you're present, even simple moments feel richer. Focus restores meaning to experience. Everything. There is a quiet confidence that comes from being able to control your attention. You stop feeling pulled by every demand. You stop feeling behind. You begin to trust yourself again. Everything. Focus builds self-respect because it proves that you can direct your own mind, that you are not a victim of distraction, that you can choose where your life energy goes. Everything. In a distracted world, focus becomes a competitive advantage, but more importantly, it becomes a form of inner peace. When you know how to protect your attention, you protect your time, everything, your energy, and your sense of self. You stop living in reaction mode and start living deliberately. And from that place of calm control, everything you do begins to carry more weight. Everything, more clarity, and more purpose. Consistency is where effort becomes identity, and intention turns into a way of life. Everything. This is the point where everything you've learned either fades into motivation that comes and goes, everything, or solidifies into a system that carries you forward even on the days you don't feel inspired. Most people think consistency means never failing, never missing a day, never slowing down. Everything. In reality, consistency is about continuity, not perfection. It's about staying connected to the path, even when your pace changes. Think about how real progress actually happens. Everything. It's rarely dramatic. It's quiet, repetitive, and often invisible in the moment. The person who becomes successful isn't the one who works hardest for a week or a month. Everything, it's the one who keeps showing up, adjusting, and continuing long after the excitement fades. Consistency is not powered by emotion. It's powered by structure, self-trust, everything, and the decision to return again and again. There's a story you see everywhere, even if people don't talk about it openly. Someone starts strong, new routine, new habits, new goals. Everything, for a while, everything feels aligned. Then life interrupts, a bad week, a missed workout, a project that doesn't go as planned. And suddenly, the mind steps in and says, "You've fallen off everything. You broke the streak. What's the point now?" That moment is where most people quit, not because they failed, but because they interpreted the failure as a verdict on who they are. Everything. Consistency teaches you a different interpretation. A missed day is not a collapse. A setback is not a signal to stop. It's feedback. It's part of the rhythm. When you adopt this mindset, recovery becomes faster, lighter, and less emotional. You don't spiral, you reset, you don't punish yourself, you return to the system. Everything. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is separating identity from momentary performance. You are not inconsistent because you had an off week. Everything. You are not undisciplined because you lost momentum. Consistency is proven over time, not measured in isolated moments. When you internalize this, everything, you stop making dramatic decisions based on temporary states. You stop quitting on yourself. Real consistency is built by making things easier to continue, not harder to start. Everything. This is where many people go wrong. They design systems that require maximum effort, perfect conditions, and high motivation. Those systems collapse the moment life becomes inconvenient. Everything. Sustainable consistency is built on simplicity, clear routines, small commitments, standards that are realistic, not heroic. Imagine someone who commits to exercising for an hour every day. Everything. It works until it doesn't. Compare that to someone who commits to moving their body in some form every day, even if it's 10 minutes. One system breaks under pressure, the other adapts. Everything. Over a year, the second person almost always outpaces the first, not because they tried harder, but because they stayed in motion. Consistency also changes how you relate to time. Everything. You stop expecting instant results and start trusting accumulation. You understand that small actions compound, even when they don't feel significant. Everything. Reading a few pages a day doesn't feel life-changing until months later when your thinking has sharpened. Saving a small amount regularly doesn't feel powerful until suddenly it is. Everything. The magic isn't in the size of the action. It's in the refusal to stop. There will be seasons where you perform at your best and seasons where you simply maintain. Both are valuable. Everything. Maintenance is not stagnation. It's preservation. It's what allows growth to resume without starting from zero. Everything. Consistency teaches you to respect low-energy days without abandoning high standards. You may do less, but you don't do nothing. Another key part of consistency is environment. Everything. Willpower fades, but environments persist. The more your surroundings support your habits, the less effort consistency requires. This could mean organizing your workspace so focus is easier. Everything. Preparing the night before so mornings are smoother. Removing friction wherever possible. Productivity becomes automatic not because you're stronger, but because your system is smarter. Everything. There's also an emotional maturity that comes with long-term consistency. You stop chasing excitement and start valuing stability. You realize that progress feels boring sometimes. Everything. And that boredom is not a problem. It's often a sign that you're doing something right. When actions become routine, they stop draining emotional energy. They simply happen. Everything. Consistency reshapes your relationship with motivation. Instead of waiting to feel ready, you act based on commitment. Motivation becomes a bonus, not a requirement. And interestingly, everything. Action often creates motivation, not the other way around. Once you start, momentum follows. Once momentum builds, belief strengthens. Setbacks will still happen. That's unavoidable, everything. But consistency teaches you how to recover without drama. You don't make grand promises to get back on track. You just take the next small step. You return to your baseline habits, everything. You reconnect with your structure. Recovery becomes calm, almost mechanical. Over time, something subtle but powerful happens. You begin to trust yourself, everything. You trust that even if you fall behind, you'll return. You trust that you don't need emotional intensity to move forward. This self-trust is one of the most valuable outcomes of consistency. Everything. It reduces anxiety. It increases confidence. It creates internal stability. Consistency also protects you from extremes. Everything. You're less likely to burn out because you're not constantly pushing at maximum capacity. You're less likely to quit because you're not relying on fragile motivation. Everything. You operate within a range that is sustainable, strong, but flexible. As effort turns into lifestyle, everything. Productivity stops feeling like a task you manage and starts feeling like a natural expression of who you are. You don't ask yourself whether you should show up. You simply do. Everything. Not because it's always easy, but because it's familiar, because it's aligned with your identity. This is how long-term momentum is built, quietly, repeatedly, without applause. And yet, everything. Over time, the results become undeniable. The person who stayed consistent ends up far ahead of the person who relied on bursts of intensity. Not because they were more talented, everything, but because they stayed connected to the process. Consistency doesn't promise fast transformation. It promises reliable progress. It doesn't demand perfection. It demands return, everything. And when effort becomes a lifestyle, productivity is no longer something you chase. It's something you live day by day, choice by choice, steadily moving forward.